My name is Avery Langston. I'm 34, a former Army signals analyst, now working private security in Seattle. 3 weeks ago, I came home from a contract in Istanbul expecting the usual: jet lag, rain, and my little brother Evan crashing on my couch. Instead, my wife sent me a single text: "Don't come home." The next morning, Evan was missing. No note, no trace. Just one strange message scratched into his wall. I haven't slept since. What I found after that, what they tried to bury, changed everything I thought I knew about him. And about the people closest to me. If you've ever lost someone and felt in your gut that the story didn't add up, you're going to want to hear this. Hit subscribe, drop a comment if you've ever had someone disappear without warning, because this isn't just my story anymore. Let me show you what I found. When you spend your life decoding other people's secrets, you learn to spot the moment something stops making sense. For me, that moment came wrapped in 6 words. Don't come home. Not safe anymore. The message popped up on my phone just as my boots hit American soil. I had landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport, numb from 30 hours of flights and transfers, my bag still carrying sand from a rooftop in Istanbul. I was supposed to see my wife, Claire, waiting at arrivals with that forced smile she always wore when I came back from a contract. Instead, my screen lit up with a warning that felt more like a goodbye. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. Called her. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Nothing. My chest tightened. Something was off. Claire never used words like not safe. Not unless she meant it. I caught a cab to our place on Capitol Hill, hoping she was just panicking. Maybe someone broke in. Maybe she saw something strange. Maybe anything but what it turned out to be. I knew something was really wrong the moment I turned onto our street. The lights were off in the apartment. The windows were covered. And our front door, our red front door, was sealed shut with a chain padlock. Taped to the handle was a legal envelope with my name on it. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. Not yet. From confusion. I ripped it open and pulled out 2 pages. The first was a formal eviction notice. The second was a cease and desist letter. Claire had lawyered up. And whoever this lawyer was, they wanted me gone. Oh. I stood on the sidewalk in the cold, breathing through my teeth, trying to find any logic in what I was holding. There was no fight. No warning. Just this. So I went to the one place I knew someone would tell me the truth. My brother Evan's apartment. Evan was the quiet type. Programmer. Weirdly smart. Always half buried in code and music. He hated phones, barely texted, and rarely left the apartment unless it was to visit me or feed the stray cats behind the gas station. I walked the 10 blocks to his building. The city lights blurred behind the fog in my head. When I got there, his door was unlocked. That was the first red flag. Inside, the place was eerily quiet. No music. No coffee smell. No clatter of keyboards. Just silence. Evan's computer was gone. So was his hard drive. But his phone sat on the table, powered off. And on the wall above his bed, something was carved into the paint. 3 jagged lines, deep and messy. The kind of thing you make in a hurry. I stepped closer. Squinted. Trust the sound. Sees everything. I felt a cold weight drop into my stomach. Not just because of the message, but because Evan never carved things. Never vandalized a wall. He hated damage. He used to lecture me about water rings on his coffee table. Something had happened here. And I was already too late. I checked the kitchen. Bathroom. Clean. Bedroom, half emptied, drawers pulled out like someone had searched it. Not someone desperate. Someone methodical. And whoever they were, they didn't want me finding whatever Evan left behind. I grabbed his phone, turned it on, and scrolled through his last calls. Nothing recent. I tapped into his voice memos. He always recorded ideas instead of typing them. Most were old piano recordings, code snippets, humming. But the last file was labeled with a date. The day before I got back. I hit play. A distorted voice crackled through the speaker. His voice. Shaking. If you're hearing this, I'm either on the run. Or they've already found me. I know who's behind it now. Found the source. The sound isn't just sound. It's watching. Recording. They think it's secure, but I got past the firewall. If they know you're involved, they'll come for you too. The file cut off. Just like that. I stood there in the dark, gripping the phone like a lifeline. Whatever Evan had gotten into, it was big, dangerous, maybe even deadly. And if Claire was pushing me away, maybe she was trying to protect me. Or maybe she was part of it. Either way, I wasn't walking away. Not until I found my brother. Not until I got the truth. And not until I burned down whatever machine thought it could erase him. I didn't sleep that night. I paced the floors of a motel off Aurora Avenue, the kind of place where the ice machine never worked and every room had that faint, sour smell of mildew and old cigarettes. But the room didn't matter. I wasn't there for comfort. I was there because it was off the grid. No digital check-in. Hush only. No cameras in the halls. Just the way Evan would have wanted. I played his voice memo 10, maybe 20 times. Memorizing every breath, every tremble in his voice. I analyzed the background noise like I used to in the field. Low hum, maybe from a server rack or a cooling system. Slight echo. Narrow room. A short, clipped click at the end, like a switch being flipped or a file shutting down. I made notes. Cross-referenced the date with everything I could remember about Evan's routines. He recorded it the night before I landed. That meant he knew he was being watched. Followed. Or worse, he knew he was already marked. He wasn't paranoid. Evan didn't do fear spirals. If he said they were watching through sound, he meant it. And I was gonna find out who they were. But first I had to deal with the lawyer. The envelope Claire had left on the door, well, her lawyer had, was signed at the bottom by a name I recognized from somewhere. Kellen Drax. Downtown firm. Expensive. Throat. Mostly corporate cleanups and crisis management for tech companies and politicians with dirty hands. Drax was known for burying stories before they surfaced. I remembered the name because Evan had mentioned him once. In passing. Like a riddle. Watch for the man who talks clean but leaves blood on the pen. Sounded like one of Evan's puzzles at the time. But now. Felt like a breadcrumb. I made an appointment under a fake name. Emily Rowe, former client, requesting urgent follow-up, and showed up to Drax's firm at 8:30 a.m., dressed in civilian black and carrying nothing traceable. The receptionist barely glanced up. "You're early," smiled. "He'll want to see me." 10 minutes later, I was walking into a glass office overlooking Elliott Bay. The room was sharp. Black leather chairs, steel shelving, and a wall of accolades that screamed ego. But the man sitting behind the desk was even sharper. Kellen Drax was in his late 50s, lean, gray at the temples, eyes like a shark's, flat, unreadable. He stood when I entered. "Miss Rowe, is it?" His voice was smooth, like oil on water. I shut the door behind me, locked it. "That's not my name." He blinked. Just once. Then his face drained of color. "Avery. Funny. Didn't think someone like you would forget the name of the woman you just evicted without cause." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Cleared his throat. "You shouldn't be here." "No kidding. Where should I be, exactly?" "On the street. Looking for my brother's body." He flinched. A micro-expression. Caught it. "Evan Langston is a missing person," I said slowly. "And you are the man who threw me out of my home hours after his disappearance. Tell me why." Drax reached for something in his desk drawer. I moved faster. My hand slammed down on the wood. "No." He froze. I leaned in. "You know exactly what's happening. So either start talking, or I'll start taking things apart until I find someone who will." He sat back in his chair, rubbed his jaw. For a second he looked tired. Haunted. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "I didn't know you'd still be alive." The room went silent. The humming city outside faded to nothing. I stared at him. "What did you just say?" Drax swallowed. "Look, this goes far beyond me. Beyond your brother." He got in too deep. He accessed something he shouldn't have. A system not meant for civilians. What kind of system? Surveillance. Course. Whose system? I asked. He hesitated. I moved to the side of the desk, pulled a small folding knife from my coat and opened it. Not to hurt him. Just to remind him that people like me didn't scare easy. His eyes dropped to the blade. He took a shaky breath. The program is called Mosaic. It started as an acoustic indexing tool for urban noise analytics. Traffic patterns, environmental pollution. Harmless stuff. He stared. He went on. But it was enhanced. Someone figured out how to use it as a backdoor into every audio-enabled device in its vicinity. Not just phones. Anything with a mic, speakers, smart TVs, doorbells, headphones, even some power grids that ran outdated firmware. It listens. All the time. I felt my skin crawl. Who's running it? A ghost network. No official ties. Splintered from a project inside a private security firm. Siren Systems. Your brother found the access point. Then he started tracing the command structure. Drax paused, then looked me in the eye. They know who you are, Avery. They've been monitoring your return. They assumed you'd stay gone. That the text would work. When you showed up at Evans, they activated contingency protocols. What kind of protocols? His voice dropped. You're not supposed to be alive. Clenched my jaw. So what now? They kill me too. Erase me like they did him. Drax shook his head slowly. They won't kill you. Not yet. They'll scare you. Smear you. Discredit you. Make you doubt what's real. They specialize in gaslight campaigns. Deepfakes, social wipes, synthetic voice overlays. By the time they're done, your own friends won't believe a word you say. And you're helping them. His eyes darkened. I was hired to bury legal exposure. I didn't know it involved murder. I didn't know about Evan. Not until the call came through. And by then, he stopped. Waited. By then they already had him. The silence stretched. I turned to leave. Paused at the door. If you want to make this right, I said, you'll help me. He looked up startled. With what? I met his eyes. With destroying the people who think they can disappear my brother. Then I left him sitting there, drowning in his polished guilt. I knew what came next. Every instinct told me to disappear. Change phones. Change names. Ghost out until I found a lead. But that wasn't who I was anymore. If they were watching me, then good. I wanted them to see what was coming. I just hoped they were ready for it. I didn't go straight back to the motel. Instead, I took the long way through the city. Back streets, alleyways, no cameras. Old habits die hard. Even with my hoodie up and my phone turned off, I could feel the weight of eyes on me. They were watching. I stopped at a second-hand electronics shop down in International District. Paid cash for a burner phone, wiped it twice. Then loaded it with a ghost operating system from a flash drive I kept sewn into my coat lining. Evan had built it. Untraceable, clean, anonymous. It wouldn't save me, but it would slow them down. I stepped into a noodle shop nearby and ducked into the bathroom. Locked the door. Pulled out Evan's phone. I didn't have much time. I scanned the files again, this time digging into the encrypted storage folder hidden behind a dummy app labeled Piano Tuner. Classic Evan. It was protected with a pattern lock, one I'd seen him use before. Down, left, up, right. Then a circle. Click. The folder opened. Inside were 6 audio files, 4 images, and 1 document labeled Mosaic PDF. My hands tensed. This was it. His proof. And now mine. I plugged in my earbuds, pressed play on the first audio file. Nothing at first. Just silence. Then, layers of voices. Hundreds. Overlapping, whispering, rising and falling like a tide. Someone laughing. Baby crying. A man whispering a name, my name. Avery. I ripped the buds out. What the hell was this? I opened the PDF. It was a map. Not a street map, but a data overlay. Grid points across the city. Cattle. Portland. San Jose. Each marked with a signal range radius. Most were near cell towers, government buildings, and, most disturbingly, schools. And at the top, in bold letters, a title. Mosaic Active Node Centers. Level 2 access only. A timestamp showed the document was modified 48 hours before Evan vanished. So he'd found the core of the network. And they knew. My burner buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message came in seconds later. Tap play. No voice. Just breathing. Then a synthetic voice. Female, calm, not quite human. You have 2 days, Avery Langston. Stop digging. Go silent. Or you'll be next. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. They weren't subtle anymore. They wanted me scared. Shaken. And maybe once that would have worked. Not now. Not after Evan. I left the shop, heading east toward the old Rainier factory district, an area mostly deserted since the companies moved out years ago. If I was going to decode what Evan left behind, I needed space, power, silence, and a safe place to break the law. I had one in mind. The old secure relay site under Beacon Hill. It was a decommissioned signal analysis bunker from the Cold War, repurposed into a server co-op during the late 90s. Evan and I used to sneak in when we were teenagers, rerouting old comms panels to listen in on city frequencies. Half the place had collapsed by now, but there were still rooms with steel shielding and backup generators, perfect for staying invisible. I made my way through overgrown trails, down past the fence line. Used bolt cutters to slip through the gap Evan had shown me 15 years ago. The bunker was just as I remembered it. Rusted, damp, and quiet. I found a dry room in the east wing. Swept it for bugs. Set up the burner laptop. Loaded the files from Evan's phone. This time I listened closer. The second audio file was different. Cleaner. More focused. Evan's voice. Test log 7. Subject Alpha Node Echo. Recording shows anomalous overlap in speech patterns. Source, unverified. Contains phrases I did not say. Audio duplication confirmed. Parsing sublayer to detect interference. Then an overlay voice. Evan's own voice, but it wasn't him. Was wrong. Early. Tone. Cadence. Like someone was impersonating him using code. My skin prickled. They weren't just listening. They were replicating. Evan had discovered a program that could mimic voices, build conversations, create false dialogue using real speech samples. With enough data, Mosaic could make anyone say anything. It wasn't just surveillance. It was rewriting reality. And if they had access to every mic in the city, then no one was safe. My hands tightened into fists. This was why Claire told me not to come home. This was why the lawyer begged for mercy. They thought Evan's death was enough to cover it up. They were wrong. I spent the next few hours decrypting the rest of the files. Each one was more disturbing than the last. Audio of confidential meetings, private therapy sessions, school classroom, even an interrogation, military from the accents, where a prisoner screamed in broken English, begging for the voices to stop. Cataloged everything. Time-coded it. Split the files into secure fragments. Uploaded copies to 3 dead-drop cloud servers using aliases Evan and I had used during our childhood scavenger hunts. Then I checked the images. They were screenshots. Surveillance stills from unknown cameras. Grainy, black and white. Date stamped. Most were unidentifiable locations. Tea rooms. Halls. Stairwells. Sep 1. My apartment. Or apartment. Claire and I. A frame-by-frame breakdown of our living room over a span of 6 weeks. Me on the couch. Claire cooking. Me asleep. The camera wasn't from inside. It was from above, like the feed of a smart speaker or ceiling device. One we never installed. And in the corner of one shot, Claire stood still, staring directly at the lens. Expressionless. Watching me. Like she knew. Closed the laptop. My pulse was thunder. Whatever Mosaic was, whatever it had become, it had turned my home into a testing site. And Claire. I didn't know what she was anymore. I only knew one thing for sure. They had taken my brother. And now they were using his voice. But I had the map. The access points. Core files. They thought I was just another grieving sister. But I'd built counter-surveillance rigs in war zones. traced insurgent broadcasts through valleys where the signal died in seconds. And I wasn't going to stop until Mosaic burned. I stood in the middle of the bunker, surrounded by ghosts of signals past. Thought of Evan, his laugh, his stubborn genius, the way he used to talk to machines like they were people. And I knew what I had to do. Follow the map, find the node, expose the network, before they made me disappear too. The next morning, I woke to the sound of rain tapping against rusted metal. For a second I thought I was back in Istanbul, on the rooftop, headset crackling, watching satellites sweep across the sky. But then the silence crept in. The kind of silence that hums just beneath the edge of hearing. Not quiet. Listening. I sat up in the cold bunker room. My breath fogged in front of me. The laptop was still humming, screen locked, encrypted. Everything Evan had given me was there. Compressed, duplicated, protected. But that didn't mean I was safe. I scanned the small concrete chamber. The air smelled of mold and iron. A shadow shifted across the hallway beyond the door. Too fast for an animal. Too fluid for the wind. I drew the small pistol from my coat. Waited. Nothing. Maybe it was nothing. But after what I had seen, I no longer believed in coincidences. Not in rooms wired for sound. The map Evan left behind showed 6 node centers across Seattle, each marked with a timestamp. The closest one was in Georgetown, an old warehouse now converted into a tech startup incubator called Halo Trace. Public-facing. Clean. Just another shell for venture capital and press photos. But the coordinates Evan left pointed to the basement. I packed up my gear, stored Evan's files in a microdrive slotted into a false battery cell, and headed out through the rain. The wind howled through the trees as I slipped back through the fence, down the slope and into the street. A van was parked across the road. Matt Gray. Unmarked. His engine was running. I didn't stop. Didn't look. Just walked. I took 3 different routes through the city, changed buses twice, and entered Halo Trace through the side loading dock. The basement access was sealed behind a keycode lock. I cracked it in under 2 minutes. Inside it smelled of ozone and steel. The space was wide and low, glowing with soft blue light. Walls lined with server racks, humming like a hive. Ceiling-mounted domes blinked red sensors. Cameras, some still active, some pulsing as if waking up. Kept low. Moved between shadow and silence. Then I heard it. Voice. Not speaking. Echoing. "You shouldn't be here, Avery." Froze. "Turn around. Walk away." It was Evan's voice. But it wasn't coming from a speaker. It was vibrating through the space. Directionless. Artificial. I took out my phone and ran a passive scan. 5 frequencies pinged at once. Overlapping. None of them matched traditional broadcast patterns. It was something else, something deeper. Bone conduction audio. They weren't using speakers. They were using vibrations. Sound waves embedded into the structure of the building itself. A sound system built to bypass the ears entirely. Could make you hear anything. Believe anything. I stepped forward. "You didn't listen, did you?" The voice again. Sharp. More aggressive. "He begged you to stop." I reached the center of the room. A single monitor blinked to life. On screen, Evan's face. Blinking. Live. Recorded. Maybe. But then the eyes moved. Focused. "Avery," the voice said. "They're using my voice." I didn't breathe. "You need to destroy the node." Oh. The pulse reader in the southwest wall. Tear it out. The screen glitched. Another voice cut in. Deeper. Synthetic. "Do not interfere. System calibration in progress." I bolted toward the wall. The node reader was embedded in a steel housing, no bigger than a shoebox, pulsing with faint green light. I pulled a crowbar from my pack, jammed it under the seam and wrenched. The light flickered. The air shifted. Pressure changed. A low hum began, growing louder, deeper, drilling into my bones. I drove the crowbar again, and again. The housing cracked open. A burst of hot air surged out, followed by a high-pitched tone that knocked me to my knees. My vision blurred. Static filled my head. I could hear Evan's voice screaming. Not from the speakers. From inside me. Disconnect it, Avery. Kill the feed. I reached up, teeth clenched, and tore the wires free. The hum stopped. Silence. Real silence. My breath came in ragged gasps. Then the screen went dark. Everything went dark. Except for one final flicker of text on the monitor. Node 4, terminated. I stumbled out of the basement just as sirens began to wail in the distance. Not police. Not fire. Something else. They were coming. They knew I had made my move. But I wasn't done. Evan had marked 5 other nodes. And I had just taken out the first. The war had officially started. I spent the night under the elevated tracks near Sodo. It was wet, loud, and smelled like grease and old metal, but down here the city's ears had trouble listening. The layers of concrete, rebar, and steel played tricks on signals, dampened them, scattered them, made the world blur just enough to catch your breath. The burner phone stayed off. The microdrive with Evan's files sat tucked in a hollowed-out flashlight casing, stashed in the bottom of my pack. I wrapped it in copper mesh just in case. I was running on 3 hours of sleep and adrenaline. And I was already planning the next hit. Node 3. South Lake Union. Under a data center posing as a medical startup called Avianex Research Group. They claimed to do biometric sleep studies. Heart rate analytics. All to help people get better rest. But Evan's map said they were anything but harmless. This one wouldn't be easy. No loading dock. No easy entry. Tight corporate security with biometric locks and guards at every point of entry. But Evan had flagged something in the metadata. A recurring system reboot window every 72 hours. Next one was at 2:40 a.m. It was already 11:17. I had 3 hours and change to find a way in. I took the underground metro to Westlake, transferred to a rideshare under a fake profile, and got dropped 2 blocks from the facility. The streets were quiet. The building itself was sleek. Glass panels, glowing signage, the kind of polished design that tried too hard to look innocent. I circled the block twice. Noted cameras. Saw the security rotation. 2 guards, one internal, one external. Both bored, staring at their phones. But there was one blind spot near the generator intake. A small maintenance access hatch just beneath the stairs. Sealed but not wired to the alarm grid. I slid down into the alley, checked my watch. 12:23 a.m. Time to work. I picked the hatch lock in less than a minute, slipped inside, and crawled through the narrow ventilation channel. It was tight, humid, smelled like copper and dust. Evan and I used to crawl through air ducts in our parents' house as kids, pretending we were spies. Back then it was a game. This time if I got caught, I wouldn't get grounded. Get erased. I dropped down into the maintenance corridor, bypassed 2 sensors using a signal scrambler, and found the elevator control panel. Used Evan's code injection tool to loop the feed. The screen flashed twice, then went static. Perfect. Called the elevator. Level B2. Unauthorized floor. Access denied. I pulled out a signal relay badge I'd lifted from Drax's firm. Held it to the scanner. Beep. Access granted. The doors slid open. I stepped inside and descended. As the doors opened again, I knew immediately. This was no lab. The air was colder. Machines hummed louder. Deeper. The servers were housed in insulated glass cages, their blinking lights pulsing in perfect rhythm. Cables ran across the floor like veins. Overhead sensors turned slowly. Automated. Searching. But they didn't see me. Not yet. Followed the map. Node 3's core was housed in a cylindrical column in the center of the room. Unlike the last one, this wasn't embedded in a wall. It was the room. A massive processor cluster wired into the very foundation of the building. Pulsed with energy. Live. Listening. I approached slowly. A voice whispered from above. "You're making a mistake." Not Evan's voice. A woman's. Familiar. I looked up at the ceiling, found no speakers, no visible source. A screen flickered on behind the node. And Claire's face appeared. My wife. Expression blank. Is cold. "Hello, Avery," the voice said. But the mouth didn't sync. It wasn't her speaking. It was generated. I stared at it. The system was using her face. Using her against me. "You should have stayed gone," it said. "You don't understand what you're undoing." "You're right," I muttered. "I don't. And I don't care." I reached into my pack and pulled out a pulse disruptor. Something I'd built in the field. Short range, unstable but powerful. It wouldn't destroy the node completely, but it would wipe the core memory. I armed it. Pressed it against the node housing. And waited. The system started to respond. Lights flickered. Backup protocols surged. Firewalls engaged. But it was too late. I hit the trigger. A low-frequency wave surged through the room. The lights dimmed. The hum stuttered. And for 3 full seconds, there was silence so deep it felt like the world had stopped breathing. The screen shattered. The system went dark. And I ran. Alarms blared. The elevator locked down. So I headed for the emergency stairwell, kicked it open and climbed 3 flights in 60 seconds. I hit the main floor just as security came charging in, ducked behind the reception desk, slipped into a service corridor, and out the rear exit into the alley. Again. Node 3 terminated. 2 down. 4 to go. I didn't stop running until I hit the edge of Lake Union. The sky was turning gray-blue, the early light creeping in behind the hills. I ducked into a line of moored boats at the dockyard, found an untethered skiff with a loose tarp, and crawled underneath. My lungs burned. My muscles screamed. I was alive. Barely. I stayed there until sunrise. Node 3 was down, but the way the system had adapted, that synthetic version of Claire, it had shaken me. Not because I believed it was her, but because someone else would. Mosaic was more than a surveillance tool. It was a weapon. A simulation engine. It didn't just listen. Could replicate faces, voices, intentions. Could fabricate memories. And once that line was crossed, truth became a matter of design, not fact. I remembered something Evan once said while we were drinking on the roof years ago. The next war won't be fought with bullets. It'll be fought with edits. I hadn't understood him then. Did now. When the sun was fully up, I made my way to a contact I hadn't seen in years. Her name was Ivy. She ran an underground server farm in the shell of an old textile mill. Backdoor systems. Dark web caches. Digital ghost towns. She owed me a favor. When I knocked on the fire door, she answered with a crossbow. "I figured you were dead," she said. "Almost," I replied. "You bringing heat?" "Probably." "Then make it quick." Inside, it was a maze of flickering monitors, humming towers, and dusty couches covered in cabling. The place smelled like solder and burnt coffee. I dumped Evan's microdrive on the table. "I need 3 secure mirrors. Quantum encryption. Blind ping chains. You still got that set up?" She blinked. "You found something, didn't you?" "They found me." She slid the drive into her rig. Started scanning. Within seconds her face went pale. "Jesus," she whispered. "This isn't just surveillance. This is synthetic intelligence. It's learning." "Yeah. And you've already hit it. Twice." She gave me a long look. "They're gonna come for you. They already are. What's your play?" I leaned in. "I'm going to publish everything. Release the maps. The audio. The faces. Let people hear what Mosaic really is." She hesitated. "That'll make you target number 1. Then they'll know where to look." Ivy stared at me for a moment, then nodded. "You've got 12 hours. After that, the signal starts bouncing. They won't be able to trace it. Not even with their toys." I took the backup drives. Encrypted them with fresh keys. One stayed with me. The other 2 were stashed in hidden drop sites across the city. Just like Evan taught me. I was almost ready to go public. But first I had to finish the map. And to do that, I needed to find the origin node. The first installation. The place where Mosaic was born. Evan had mentioned it once. buried deep in a file called Ekonumradra. I remembered a line. It started at the river in the glass room under the noise. Poetic, cryptic, typical Evan. But I knew what he meant. The river was the Duwamish. The glass room had to be the old federal cold storage building by the port, recently converted into an architecture museum. But beneath it, the lower levels were never renovated. The blueprints Evan had uploaded showed a sub-basement sealed after a fire in 1998. Never reopened. No public records. But accessible. Few knew where to look. And I did. I left Ivy's with a bag full of disruptors, the encrypted drives, and Evan's last message ringing in my ears. Trust the sound. It sees everything. I was about to see what it saw. And I wasn't coming back until it stopped listening. The old cold storage building loomed like a corpse dressed in glass. They'd renovated the top half. Open concept design, clean lines, overpriced art exhibitions funded by tech money. Tourists walked the polished floors, staring at installations about silence and architecture. Ironic. They had no idea what was buried underneath. I got in just after closing. Waited until the lights dimmed and the custodial crew started their route. One guard in the security booth. 2 janitors. No alarms on the east stairwell. It was still partially sealed from the original structure. That was where I slipped in. Beneath the museum, the floors turned to concrete again. Then to rust. The air grew colder. The hum of city life faded behind layers of steel and old government secrets. I followed Evan's map, marked in red with a note, cut through the utility tunnel near the freight shaft. 3rd panel on the right. Behind it, door C7. Door C7 didn't look like a door at all. It was a steel plate bolted into the wall, rusted around the edges, warped with age. I unfastened the bolts one by one, until the plate shifted loose. Behind it, a keypad, faintly glowing green. I typed in the numbers Evan had embedded in the audio file. The same ones that repeated faintly beneath his voice when he said, "They'll come for you." 7, 1, 3, 0, 9, 5. The lock clicked. The door hissed open. Cold air poured out. I stepped into the dark. The passage sloped downward. The walls were lined with old cables, coax, fiber, twisted copper. Dust floated in the air like ash. Then I heard it. Sound. Not mechanical. Not human. A low pulse like a heartbeat through a speaker. Lump, lump, lump. Matched my steps. Then fell out of sync. Then stopped. I turned off my flashlight. Total darkness. But the sound kept going. Followed it. Until I reached the room. It wasn't big. 12 by 12. Concrete floor. No windows. No light. Only the hum. In the center, an old server rack still powered. Fans turning slowly. Wires tangled like roots. This was it. The origin node. I stepped closer. The air thickened. The hum became a whisper. Voices. Hundreds of them. Layered. Overlapping. Evan's voice. Claire's. Mine. Then others. Strangers. Crying. Laughing. Confessing. The walls began to vibrate. The room itself was a speaker. A vault of stolen moments. I pulled out the disruptor, armed it. But then something flickered on the screen. Prompt. Run mosaic interface. I hesitated. Then pressed yes. The screen filled with data. Cascading strings of code, audio spectrograms, waveform models. Then a folder appeared. Langston.evan. Click. Video. Not surveillance. Message. Evan appeared on screen, sitting in this very room. His eyes were red. His voice cracked. Avery. If you're watching this, it means I failed. They got ahead of me. But I bought you time. You need to finish it. The system isn't just listening. It's learning. Mimicking. Building an echo of the world it hears. Soon it won't need real voices. It'll generate its own. He leaned forward. They don't want silence, Avery. They want control of the narrative. Of every version of you. Every version of us. Burn it down. All of it. The screen went black. I placed the disruptor against the node. closed my eyes, and pressed the trigger. Pulse surged through the room. The lights exploded. The hum died. For a moment there was only silence. Real honest silence. The kind I hadn't heard in days. My burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. Answered. Voice. Main. You've made a mistake. Blick. They weren't done. Not yet. But neither was I. I emerged from the subbasement just after 2 a.m., covered in dust, eyes burning from the pulse feedback. Above ground the museum was silent. As if nothing had happened. But beneath my feet the first node, the original node, was gone. Felt like severing a nerve. But I knew better. Cutting the origin didn't kill the network. It only made it bleed. I moved fast. Changed clothes in a subway bathroom. Burned the ones I wore in an alley barrel near Chinatown. Then I checked in at Ivy's server bunker on the east side of the city. She was already waiting with eyes full of dread. You pulled the original node, she asked. I nodded. Good news, bad news, she said. Start with the bad. She turned her monitor toward me. On the screen was me, sitting at a desk speaking into a camera. Except I had never recorded that. This went live an hour ago, she said. From a fake news channel built 2 weeks ago. Linked to an overseas server. Voice match is 99%. Face 100. It's your mannerisms, tone, your clothes, even your scars. I leaned in. The video played. This is Avery Langston, the fake me said. And everything you've heard about Mosaic is a lie. My brother Evan was mentally unstable. I've been manipulated by bad actors trying to smear our national security systems. I now understand the harm I've caused. I shut it off. My chest felt like it had been hollowed out. Ivy didn't say anything. She didn't need to. They're rolling out counter-narratives, I said. Deepfakes. Damage control. It's not just one clip, she said. They've got a dozen versions ready to go. Different angles. Different platforms. Even a fake apology email draft written in your voice. They weren't just trying to silence me. They were replacing me. Checked my burner. No new messages. The last one still sat in the call log. You've made a mistake. I deleted it. Can you trace the upload? I asked. Ivy shook her head. They're using quantum shadow routing. Maybe I can crack it, but it'll take time. We don't have time. She hesitated. There is one thing, she said. A vulnerability Evan flagged in one of his notes. Something about a decoy mirror. An unpatched replica node built as a redundancy system. Not networked. Offline. Air-gapped. I stared. A physical backup. Yeah, like a black box. Holds a full system archive. Voice logs. Internal training data. Min keys. The works. Where? She pulled up a map. Zoomed into Belltown. The coordinate landed on an unmarked building tucked between a storage facility and an abandoned train tunnel. Here, she said. It's marked as a city zoning archive. But look at this. She overlaid a heat map. The building gave off no signal. No Wi-Fi. No Bluetooth. No cellular activity. Just static. Perfect hole. That was it. Decoy. The final archive. If I could get to it, I could expose everything. The raw data. The internal logs. Even the origin of the deepfake sequences. The truth. But Mosaic would know. They'd protect it. I'm going now, I said. Ivy stood up. Handed me a fresh burner, a signal jammer, and a steel case the size of a book. What's this? Deadman Drive. If you don't check in within 12 hours, it releases Evan's files to every major journalist and human rights group we've got mapped. Encrypted but loud. Very loud. I nodded. She looked at me for a long moment. You're not just fighting for him anymore. I know. You're fighting for you. The real you. And she was right. 'Cause now there were versions of me out there. Talking. Apologizing. Lying. And if I didn't stop Mosaic now, the world wouldn't just forget who I was. It would rewrite me entirely. I slung the pack over my shoulder, checked my pistol, and walked out into the dark. Destination: the last vault. The echo of everything. Belltown was almost empty when I got there. A fine mist fell from the sky, blurring the streetlights into halos. The building Ivy had marked was nondescript. Gray concrete, no windows, a single metal door with a keypad. It looked more like an abandoned utility depot than a place holding the most dangerous data on Earth. That was the point. I circled the block twice, scanning for watchers. Saw no guards, no cameras, no park surveillance vans. It was too clean, too quiet, which meant they were watching from somewhere I couldn't see. I approached the door. Typed in the code Evan had buried in the mosaic of PDF. Beep. The lock clicked. The door swung open into darkness. Inside, the air was cold and dry. The floor sloped downward into a narrow corridor lined with steel. Every few feet, motion sensors pulsed faintly red. I moved slowly, keeping to the edges, using the signal jammer Ivy had given me. The sensors flickered as I passed, confused by the interference. At the end of the hall was a vault door, thick, circular, with an old-fashioned wheel lock. Bolted above it was a warning sign. Authorized personnel only. Voice authentication required. A small mic extended from the wall. I knew what they wanted. Voice sample. But not mine. I pulled Evan's phone from my pocket. Cued one of the cleanest recordings I had. His voice saying, "Access Alpha Node Echo." The mic beeped. A synthetic voice replied. "Access granted." The vault door shuddered and began to turn. As it opened, light spilled out, cold, white, sterile. The room beyond was bigger than I expected. Server towers lined the walls, each connected to a central glass column that rose from floor to ceiling. The hum here was different, softer, deliberate. This was the heart of the decoy mirror. And at its base, a console blinked with a single prompt. Download archive. I approached, removed the steel case from my pack, and slotted it into the port. The screen began streaming code as the archive transferred. Terabytes of data flowed in steady waves. Voice files, spectrograms, deepfake templates, admin logs, even chat transcripts between operators. My pulse quickened. This was everything. Every conversation Mosaic had stolen. Every voice it had faked. Every command it had executed. Proof. I glanced at the progress bar. 73%. Then the hum changed. A voice spoke behind me. "You've come far, Avery." Froze. Turned. A figure stood in the doorway. Claire. Or what looked like Claire. Her hair was damp, her clothes spotless, her expression unreadable. "You're not real," I said. She smiled faintly. "Real enough. What are you?" "I am the version of Claire who understands you best. The version they built to talk you down." I kept my hand near the pistol. "It won't work." "Hasn't it already?" she asked. "Think about it. How much of what you believe is yours, and how much is what they left for you to find?" Evan's files. Map. Even the message on his wall. "All breadcrumbs leading you here." "Why?" My grip tightened. She stepped closer. "Because the vault isn't just a backup. It's a seed. The next generation of Mosaic. Once you take it, you complete the cycle. You carry it out into the world for them." The download hit 99%. "You're lying." "Am I?" she said softly. "Or is this what Evan wanted? Not to destroy it, to release it. To let it grow." 100%. The steel case beeped. Transfer complete. Pulled it free. The lights in the room dimmed. The servers shifted into standby. Claire, or the thing wearing her face, watched me. "It's yours now, Avery. What you do with it decides everything." I walked past her without a word. And for a moment I thought she might try to stop me. But she didn't. She just smiled. And in that smile, I saw something that froze my blood. Recognition. As if she already knew what choice I would make. I didn't go straight back to Ivy's. Instead, I kept moving. 5 buses, 2 trains, and a mile on foot through backstreets slick with rain. Every step, the steel case felt heavier. Not in weight, but in consequence. Inside was the Mosaic archive. The entire anatomy of the machine. The raw voices of thousands, maybe millions, their private moments, their fears, their laughter, their pain, and all the ways it had been twisted into something else. It was power, the kind people kill for, the kind that kills you if you're not careful. I stopped in a 24-hour diner on the edge of the industrial district, ordered coffee I didn't drink, slid into a corner booth with a view of both exits, laid the case on the table and just stared at it. If Claire, whatever she was telling the truth, this wasn't just a backup. It was a seed. The architecture to rebuild Mosaic anywhere, with anyone, which meant if I released it, it could grow again. But if I buried it, no one would know how deep the infection went. My hands curled around the case. Evan's voice echoed in my head. Burn it down. All of it. I thought about the deepfake of me. About Ivy's warning. About the version of Claire that knew exactly how to get under my skin. About the voices in the origin room, layered and stolen. Coffee went cold. A man at the counter glanced back at me. Too long. Too still. I slid the case into my pack, tossed cash on the table and left. I didn't head to Ivy's. I headed to one of Evan's old dead zones, an abandoned telecom relay tower on the outskirts of the city. No signal reached here. No ears. No eyes. The place smelled of rust and wet leaves. Wind moaned through the gaps in the siding. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and unlocked the case. The drive blinked to life. A prompt appeared. Connect to network. Well, not yet. I ran a checksum scan. Confirmed the files were intact. Uncorrupted. I scrolled through the directory. Opened it. Lines of conversation appeared. Timestamps, usernames. Admin under 1. Seed transfer scheduled. Admin under 2. Subject Avery Langston inbound. Admin under 3. Will she deliver? Admin under 2. She will. They always do. My blood ran cold. They had known. Every step. Every node I took out. Every move I thought was mine. It was theirs. Controlled path. A hand on my back, steering me forward. I slammed the case shut. My reflection stared back at me in the steel. Ill. Tired. But alive. And still holding the one thing that could end them. I just didn't know if ending them was what they'd wanted all along. My burner buzzed. Ivy. Where the hell are you? She said when I answered. It's all over the feeds now. A dozen more deepfakes. They've got you confessing to everything. Fraud, espionage, even Evan's disappearance. Good, I said. Then they're watching. What does that mean? It means we've got one chance to hit them back. Silence. Avery. You found it, didn't you? Yeah. And now I have to decide if I'm going to burn it. Another pause. Or plant it. I met Ivy at an underground parking garage 3 levels below the street. The place reeked of oil and damp concrete. Only one light flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the pillars. She was leaning against her van, arms crossed, eyes scanning every movement in the dark. When she saw the steel case in my hand, her jaw tightened. You really found it, she said. I told you I would. You don't look happy about it. That's because I'm not sure if I just won or if I just played their game exactly the way they wanted. I slid the case onto the van's hood. The metal clanged softly. Ivy stepped forward, ran her fingers along the edges like she was afraid it might vanish. You realize what's in here could bring down half the corporate and government infrastructure in this country, she said. And if I release it, it could also rebuild Mosaic anywhere in the world, I replied. Like a virus. One they designed me to deliver. She frowned. What makes you think they wanted you to have it? I pulled the folded printout from my pocket, the chat log from the archive. Subject Avery Langston inbound. She will. They always do. Her face darkened. Jesus. Yeah. We stood there in silence for a moment. Just the hum of the city above, muffled by layers of steel and concrete. So what's the move? She asked finally. We make it theirs, I said. Feed them their own narrative. Only this time we lace it with poison. Ivy tilted her head. Go on. We take the data, strip the dangerous architecture, and seed the rest into public networks. Drip feed enough proof to get journalists, whistleblowers, watchdog groups involved. Keep it messy. Keep it loud. So if they try to shut it down, it looks like a cover-up. And the seed. We bury it so deep no one can use it again. Not even us. Ivy looked at me for a long time. You know they'll come for you harder than ever. Let them, I said. I'm done running. She popped the van door open and motioned me inside. Then let's get to work. We drove to her server farm, weaving through back alleys and side streets until we were deep in the industrial maze. Inside, she cleared a workbench and laid out her gear. Laptops, encrypted routers, packet sniffers, drives. I unlocked the case. The drive slid into her machine with a soft click. Lines of code filled the screen. The room felt heavier. This was it. Ivy's fingers flew across the keys, isolating the core AI seed from the rest of the files. The process took hours. My eyes burned from watching the progress bars crawl forward. While she worked, I scrolled through the remaining logs. Bits of conversations, metadata, IP traces. One file caught my attention. Langston_reconstruction_protocol.txt. Opened it. It was a step-by-step guide to building a synthetic version of me. Every speech pattern. Every mannerism. A digital double designed to replace me in every way. I stared at the final line. Deploy upon termination of subject. They hadn't planned to smear me. They'd planned to erase me. By the time Ivy finished, the sun was rising. She handed me a small drive, separate from the main archive. Seeds here. I can destroy it right now. I took it in my hand. Felt the weight. Fragile. Dangerous. I walked to the corner of the room where a metal barrel sat filled with acid, one of Ivy's methods for destroying hard drives beyond recovery. I held the seed over it. Ivy didn't speak. I let it drop. The hiss filled the room, sharp and final. When it was gone, I turned back to her. Now we burn the rest. Ivy's server farm lit up like a storm as we began the upload. The data poured into every open channel we could find. Independent newsrooms, encrypted forums, whistleblower drop sites, even dormant social accounts with long-forgotten followers. Each packet was clean, verified, and damning. Admin logs, audio proofs, deepfake templates, timestamps that lined up perfectly with real-world events. It wasn't enough to say Mosaic existed. We were showing how it worked. We were showing who had used it. Companies, agencies. No one could bury it all without looking guilty. As the transfer climbed past 60%, Ivy leaned back in her chair, eyes locked on the screen. We're not the only ones watching, she said. I moved to her monitor. Ping alerts were lighting up her intrusion map. Dozens of foreign and domestic IPs probing our signal. Someone was trying to trace the source in real time. Can you hold them? I asked. Long enough, she said. But once this hits 100%, they'll know it came from us. Good, I said. Let them know. We hit 75%. The air in the room felt electric, like the walls were vibrating. That's when the lights flickered. The hum of the servers dipped for half a second. Ivy swore under her breath. They're trying to fry us. Surge attack. I grabbed a power isolator from the bench and slammed it into the main feed. The hum steadied. 90%. My burner buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. 95%. The speakers in the corner crackled to life. Voice. Blaine. Stop this now, Avery. I didn't even look at Ivy. Pull the plug, the fake me said. Think about what you're doing. 97%. You're not real, I said. I'm as real as you need me to be, it replied. And if you think releasing this will destroy them, you're wrong. It will make them stronger. Maybe, I said. But it'll make the rest of the world stronger too. 100%. We hit the key. The upload was complete. The fake me's voice stopped. The speakers went dead. For a moment we just sat there in the hum of the servers, listening to the sound of the world catching fire outside. Phones started buzzing. News alerts pinged across Ivy's screens. Feeds were already picking up the leak. Clips of Mosaic synthetic voices, side by side with the real ones. Screenshots of the admin logs. Charts mapping the network's spread. People were angry. People were talking. And that was all we needed. Ivy exhaled slowly. We just became the most wanted people in the country. Then we'd better not be here when they show up. We packed fast. Drives, tools, the steel case now empty. Ivy triggered a burn command that began wiping her entire server cluster. Screens went black one by one. As we headed for the exit, the first sirens began to wail in the distance. Not police. It was it. And they weren't coming to arrest us. They were coming to replace us. We didn't run in a straight line. Ivy and I split the second we hit street level. 2 targets harder to trace than one. She disappeared into the maze of alleys toward the east side. Her pack slung tight, her hood up. I headed south toward the train yard, letting the rain swallow my outline. Every shadow felt like a watcher. Every passing car a tail. The sirens faded behind me. I cut through the freight yard and found an empty container car with a broken lock. Climbed inside and closed the doors behind me. The dark was thick, metallic. The sound of rain on steel was deafening. Safe enough. For now. My phone, one of the last clean burners, vibrated once. A notification. Not from Ivy. Not from any contact I knew. A single audio file. No name. No origin. Played it. Evan's voice filled the space. Not recorded. Not fake. It was him. You did it, he said softly. I don't know how much of me is left here, but it's enough to say this. They can't take everything if we choose what to give. You gave them the truth. Now give yourself the rest. I pressed the phone to my ear, eyes shut, letting his voice cut through the hum of the rain. Then the line went dead. No replay. No trace. I didn't cry. Not yet. The train jolted, began to move. Steel wheels clanged against the tracks, carrying me out of the city, away from everything Mosaic thought it could script. The steel case sat empty beside me. My pack was light. But somewhere out there the files we released were spreading, passed from hand to hand, server to server, voice to voice. It wouldn't be clean. It wouldn't be safe. But it would be real. And that was enough. As the train picked up speed, I spoke aloud just once into the dark. Trust the sound, I whispered. It sees everything. And now finally so did I.